وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So today inshallah ta'ala, or this evening, we'll be continuing discussing the book Al-Mulaqis Al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Fawzan Hafidhullah ta'ala, and we'll be continuing what we had started last week when we started to discuss Kitab Al-Hudud wa Ta'zirat. So we discussed the introductory chapter regarding matters pertaining to Al-Hudud, and now the Shaykh Hafidhullah ta'ala that will be discussing specific areas regarding Al-Hudud, starting with Zinnah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Bismillah.
Bismillahi wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillahi qala ma'allif hafidhahullah, chapter 2, page number 591, title Prescribed Punishments for Zinnah. Faqihs viewed that the judge or his deputy must witness the execution of the punishment for zinnah, adultery or fornication. In addition, the execution must be witnessed by some believers as well. For Allah exalted be He says, and let a group of believers witness their punishment. Surah An-Nur, Ayat 2.
So they have discussed regarding concerning what you mentioned, Al-Fuqaha, they discuss يجب في إقامة الحد الزاني حضور الإمام أو ناهبي. So matters pertaining to who are those people that must be present when the punishment of zina is being carried out. Is it compulsory, wajib, that the imam, the head of state, or someone who's one of the deputies of the state, that they are present, or a person of that position in the state should be present, and also how many people from the believers should be present. So they discussed concerning this matter, but they mentioned that وَيَشْهَدْ أَذَابُهُمَا طَائِفَةً. So they mentioned that ta'ifa at times could mean one, or it could mean a group of people. But they discussed concerning, does this ta'ifa, this group of people, is the imam and the like should be present or not? A discussion between the fuqaha, between the ulama. But as we know that that is not necessary, it's not wajib that the imam himself have to be present, but for it to be carried out, it's not compulsory that the imam himself has to be present in the execution or carrying out of these type of punishment. Aywa.
Zina is one of the most grievous crimes, and the cases of zina differ in the degree of immorality, sinfulness, and ugliness. To illustrate, having sexual intercourse with a married woman, committing incest, and having sexual intercourse with one's neighbor's wife are the most grievous types of zina. Moreover, zina is a major sin as it results in abominable consequences such as lineal disarray and confusion that lead to disconnection and miscommunication among people and to their lack of mutual support in righteousness. It also causes the corruption and destruction of all aspects of human life. Due to such grievous consequences of zina, Allah exalted be He has prescribed a severe punishment for adultery, namely stoning to death, or lashing and the banishment in case of fornication. Such severe punishments are decreed as means of deterrence and avoidance of the resulting moral and social diseases that afflict society. That is why the lawgiver of Sharia firmly prohibited committing zina. Allah exalted be He says, and do not approach unlawful sexual intercourse. Indeed, it is ever an immorality and is evil as a way. Surah Al-Isra, Ayat 32. Therefore, Allah has prescribed severe punishments for committing the sin of zina. Faqihs define zina as follows. It is the committing of illegal sexual intercourse in the vagina or the anus. Ibn Rushd said, it is every sexual intercourse that happens in any circumstance other than valid marriage or what may be thought as marriage, or with one slave girl. This is unanimously agreed upon by Muslim scholars, but they have disagreed on whether what may be thought as marriage can prevent executing the prescribed punishment or not.
They discuss here concerning of the thing that the author, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, mentioned regarding concerning that zina, regarding concerning of those matters that are considered to be a heinous crime in Islam, and they discuss that the ulama mentioned that it is considered to be one of the major sins, and also some of the things that comes with a zina. Regarding concerning people are involved either in zina or become somewhat sexual practices that are not in line with Islam, where Islam comes down very harshly on those matters. Then discuss the next matter, which is discussing the definition, istilahan, what is meant by az-zina. So what the ulama or the fuqaha define as zina. Then he mentioned that regarding concerning that al-fi'l al-fahisha fi qubul or dubur, where they discuss between, so you have a difference between the ulama as to how they defined as zina, a difference between the ulama regarding their definition of as zina. So you find that this definition that is mentioned here regarding as zina, that is the person doing fa'ish, the person that's not, the person doing sexual acts, whether in the front or the back, that you'll find that this definition is the definition given by Jumhur of the ulama amongst the Malikiyah, Shafi'iyah and the Hanabila. And this is so the Hanabila, the Shafi'iyah and the Malikiyah, which constitute Jumhur of the ulama, that they give a definition that is similar to this, which is that zina could occur with a person of intimacy outside wedlock, and either in the front or the back. So that Jumhur ulama mentioned that it's considered to be zina whether the intimacy was done through the front or the back. But you find that a second opinion of the ulama, or a second definition, that is mentioned by the Hanafi. So the ulama of the Ahnaf, that they kind of somewhat yakhtas as zina bil what fi al qubul, that the Hanafis, they hold that zina, that it is restricted to intimacy that occurs in the front. As for in the back, then they don't see it as zina. It's considered to be something else, which is said that so that considered to be something said that this meaning is somewhat more correct, as they see it as shar'an, urfan, and also lugatan. That regarding concerning that as zina, that what is understood, the definition of zina is intimacy that is being occurred where not including the back. Entry through the back is not considered to be zina, as the people normally understand what is zina. So they mentioned that the call of the Ahnaf are more precise in their definition of zina than that of the others. So that's concerning that matter. Aywa.
If the perpetrator of illegal sexual intercourse, male or female, is married and legally major, i.e. if the case is adultery, she is to be stoned to death. This is the opinion maintained by the men of religious knowledge of the Prophet's companions, the successors of the companions, and those who follow them in various Islamic states through Islamic states through different eras. None has disagreed on this opinion except the Kharijites. In addition to this, stoning to death as a legal punishment for adultery is stated in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and clearly shown through the prophetic sayings and actions that are currently narrated. Stoning the offender.
So the mention regarding concern this act of rajam regarding in certain cases, so zina has to be discussed, that the ulama have classed it into different categories, or two main categories. They mention it regarding azani al-muhsan. So zani al-muhsan al-mukallif, that's a person who have been married and have intimacy. Then what's the ruling? So a different as prescribed punishment for those cases. And a case concerning al-bikr, which would be the person who haven't, is like never been married before and have committed zina, then a specific punishment for those cases. So both will be discussed separately. So let's start concerning al-muhsan, which is a more serious case concerning the act of zina. Then so said, now, as he mentioned, that it's understood and regarding concern that a rajam is where the person is stoned to death. So a rajam is where the person who commit this act of zina, that they are stoned until they pass away. They die, and this could apply to male or female. You have concerned that one, that of those points that he mentioned, and ijma between the ulama regarding concern that a rajam, zina, muhsan, that the punishment is to be stoned to death. This apply to both male and female. That you find that, and this is considered as an ijma between the ulama, as he mentioned among the ulama, the sahaba wa tabi'in, wa min ba'dihim, and also those who came after them in ulama al-amsar fi jami' al-ahsar, the ulama of different regions during different times. There's have one, and he said, lam yukhari fi dhalik illa al-khawarij, except for the khawarij, but then you find that of contemporaries who somewhat have gone against this. You have some well famous, known, contemporary person of knowledge who kind of somewhat all concerned that that rajam is not a part of the Sharia type of thing according to that claim of that person. But then you find that you have also amongst the kuffar that when they want to attack the Muslim, you understand about the Muslim law, they always use the case of rajam as the example, stoning of death or chopping of a person. You sit in the seat as that beheading of a person. They all kind of use those cases. You understand? But you find that those cases regarding a rajam, and then when they say rajam, they always think that applies to only female. They are going to put it in the context of a female. It applies to male and female. And in Islamic history, you don't find many cases that occur regarding people being stoned to death. You don't find many cases of people being stoned to death. But that's the thing they try to attack regarding Islamic law and Sharia. So that's of the thing. But of the thing that you find some people who are known to be people of ilm that kind of somewhat try to reject that rajam is a part of the Sharia. Fallah musta'an. Aywa.
Stoning the offender to death in case of adultery was also mentioned in the Noble Quran. Then it was abrogated in wording, but its ruling is still valid. It had been stated in the following verse before it was abrogated. And when an old man, i.e. married man, or old woman, married woman, commits adultery, inevitably stone each one of them as a deterrent punishment from Allah. And Allah is exalted in might and wise. Stoning to death in case of adultery is clearly stated in the Quran through the aforementioned verse that was abrogated in wording but not in ruling, the recurrent Sunnah and the consensus of Muslim scholars. However, the Kharijites, as well as some similar modern writers, have dared to deny it, following their own desires and disregarding the prescribed legal rulings and the consensus of Muslim scholars.
Yes, so they have some modern writers who somewhat in some of their views, which are famous individuals that somewhat kind of have some views that sometimes are very strange and odd. Have some aqwal that are considered to be very strange and odd for a person, for those for particular individual taking those position and referring to that as like that rajam is from the ways of the Yahud. Rajam is from the way of the Yahud in trying to deny this act that is a part of Islam and the Sharia. Aywa.
The man supposed to be muhsan is the one who has already had sexual intercourse with his wife in her vagina, whether she is Muslim or non-Muslim, i.e. a Christian or Jew, provided both the married couple are adults, sane, free, not slaves. However, if any of these conditions is not fulfilled in one of the two spouses, then the state of ihsan is not fulfilled.
Yes, so these are shurut, as you mentioned, that you have certain shurut. So they mentioned that at the first case regarding a stoning, that applies to the case of muhsan. So a person who is muhsan, that would be the person that have experience, who fulfill certain criteria. If they fulfill these criteria or conditions, then they're said to be, their case to be that of a muhsan. Aywa.
These conditions can be summarized as follows. The sexual intercourse must be done in the vagina.
So they mentioned with the section, they said also they are concerned the intimacy, say that where the man, the part that is circumcised have entered. So it concerns a penetration of the man that to what extent of his male organ have penetrate for it to be considered to be of, we said that intimacy or what have occurred where up to the circumcised area have disappeared, have penetrated. Then that considered to be that penetration was made. If it's less than that, then it's not considered to be that he made penetration, but not to the extent of considered to be that fall into this category. Aywa.
The sexual intercourse must be within a valid marriage.
So even though the author he mentioned regarding concern with muhsan, that regarding concern the condition he mentioned that intimacy occurred, but he mentioned fi qubul in the front. He didn't mention ad-dubur. You understand? Because the general concern, the ulama, they see penetration to the from the back, it have its own separate ahkam, not per se that of what we're discussing. Aywa. So those are the conditions he's mentioning. Aywa.
Both of the two spouses must be adult, sane, and free persons.
So they mentioned all the three conditions. So they mentioned the first, intimacy have occurred, penetration, The second, يكون الوط في نكاح الصحيح, that a person have experienced marriage. So for example, a person got married, had intimacy with his wife once, then divorced her, and then had relationship outside marriage, then he's fall into the second category. So once the second category said, he mentioned three conditions. So the second condition now applies to him. Of being a muhsin, where a person has to have been married. So yes, as if he get married and divorced, the fact that he has been married, another legal marriage, and then after divorce, now whether he had that intimacy, that relationship while he was married or not married, he's still a bachelor, but he married, got divorced, now he's out, you understand, he's a bachelor again. But then he had intimacy with a woman, then he falls to the muhsin because he did get married at one point. So it's not a bikr. Like I said, a virgin or her. The same thing applies to the person who have experienced nikah as-sahih, whether they're in marriage at the same time or divorce. Then they fall into this. Then they will. This second condition applies to such circumstance. They mentioned the third. What's the third they mentioned?
Both spouses must be adult, sane, free persons.
So they mentioned regarding the second one, which is hurriya, which is they mentioned adult. They have free person. A discussion between the ulama regarding is this one of the criteria that a person has to be a free person. So they said for both sides. So I mean that the two person who had this that they fell into, they had these criteria met both sides, both the male and the female who were involved in the act. So the man that did it to a slave girl, she's not a free person. You understand? But he's a free man, she's a slave girl, that is someone, a slave girl that he did it with. You understand? Does this apply? Would it be considered to be muhsin? According to this, no.
Another person's slave girl or his...
Another's. It would be another. So that would be of the thing we mentioned that is hurriya an actual condition or not? Aywa.
The married person is singled out for stoning to death because she has already got married and become acquainted with abstinence from unlawful sexual intercourse and aware of the way to safeguard oneself against such prohibited sexual affairs. Such a person is supposed to have known how to abstain from committing adultery and consequently from suffering its legal punishment.
Aywa. That's the end of the sentence.
No, there's more on it. Thus, there is no excuse for him, her at all, as he has been completely favoured over single people through marriage, and whoever is favoured by Allah over others, his guilt is more grievous, and thus such a person deserves to be punished more severely.
Yes, I can somewhat clarify the second point, or the second condition. So that can clarify more so the second condition, and also you might find that like in today, you might find a person might been married, and they and the person been married that he can somewhat or him or her get into these marriages based upon if I don't get married I'm gonna do Zinnah. But you have been married. You understand? But they see because that taste marriage, taste intimacy, as if they want to continue, so they become very loose in making decision in getting married, as if intimacy is the main factor. So you have cases where couples have been married several times because of, they just keep going back to each other and they say out of, and then later on they say because of out of intimacy only. Intimacy only. So it's a bit, you understand? So Allah mustaan.
If a legally accountable free person commits fornication while she is not in a state of ihsan, i.e. not married or previously married, she is to be lashed 100 lashes. As Allah exalted be, He says, the unmarried woman or unmarried man found guilty of sexual intercourse, lash each one of them 100 lashes. Surah An-Nur, Ayat 2.
So this is the second case. So the first case regarding al-muhsan, regarding a person of experienced marriage, and with the condition that are mentioned, then the second case that I mentioned, غير محسن, so the person who doesn't fulfill those criteria previously mentioned, then they fall into this second category of case of zina, where their punishment is a bit different. Their punishment, so the first punishment of the muhsin is that they're stoned to death. They're stoned to death. Now, so after they've gone through their trial and they were found guilty, then the punishment is that they're stoned to death. As for the second case regarding غير المحسن, then they mentioned regarding that, that they didn't fulfill those criteria previously mentioned. So with this they mentioned that the person julid miyat jalda, the person is they're made of over that they're lashed 100 lashes. Aywa.
Thus, the prescribed punishment for adultery, which is stonen to death, is inapplicable in case of fornication, when one is not muhsan. Rather, the offender of fornication is to be lashed instead of being stoned to death, as her case involves a kind of excuse. Thus, the life of a fornicator is spared, yet he is to be punished for her sin by hurting all her body through the severest kind of lashing. Allah exalted be, He says, and do not be taken by pity for them in the religion, i.e. law of Allah. Surah An-Nur, Ayat 2.
So they mentioned, so like in the West, I always said that you have we have fornication and adultery. So, fornication, you're not actually married. So the person that, for example, he was married, then divorced legally. But then he's going to someone, he's sleeping, but he hasn't married that person yet. You understand? That's considered to be?
Adultery.
Is that adultery or fornication?
Adultery.
Even though he's not married.
No, but he's been married before.
Now, not Islamically, over here.
They call it fornication.
I'm saying over here, in this, you understand? So in this society, in this law, will that consider, and so for that, is it understanding for them, adultery is only when the person is while you're married.
No.
So if you're, I said, the person was married, right, divorced, but now he's going on to someone that is not his wife, a girlfriend, but they're sleeping together.
No.
Is that is
That's not
that is fornication, according to how it is understood over here.
No. No.
They don't even consider it comes to no common law now. You understand? But overall consideration that adultery for us, adultery would be where the person is married or outside marriage, but the fact that he has been married is adultery. It is adultery along with the person, whether he's within his still having relation outside marriage with his wife, or divorced and having relationship, intimacy, then that is still adultery with us. Aywa.
They only use it's not a legal term used in the UK, but it's just something that's usually used in a religious or moral.
It's not a legal terminology.
Yeah,
It's more like based upon the norms of society.
Yeah, they don't use that.
Okay, legally.
They only use the word fornication when it comes to religious, moral, or context. That's what they use this word.
Okay.
In terms of
So legally is not a legal term.
yeah,
It's not a legal term.
Yeah, fornication is not.
But you find cases where people.
Context, not used in a legal context.
But I'm saying you find cases where I said that a woman who end the marriage because she accused her husband or him of adultery.
Yeah, no, that's it. Adultery, yes, that's what they use. They use that
Okay.
as a legal term. But fornication, they don't.
Also, fornication is not a legal term. The more the word they use, adultery is more the term that they use. Okay. Okay then, Jade. Or for in the sense of understanding the terminology that they use. So for them, fornication not really a legal matter.
No.
It's more adultery.
Yeah.
Okay. So fornication more so from a religious perspective of marriage outside relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
Religious and legal.
Fornication.
Yeah.
The word
No,
fornication.
adultery.
Yeah, I'm saying we're saying fornication. So the word for them more, it goes back to adultery, not per se fornication, according to their legal system. Okay.
This means that there should be no mercy towards fornicators concerning the execution of the prescribed punishment, namely lashing. Moreover, Allah exalted be He addresses the executor saying, if you should believe in Allah on the last day. Surah An-Nur, Ayah 2. That is, there should be no mercy in such cases if the executor is a true believer, as faith entails firmness in their religious affairs and exerting all effort to establish their rulings. It is authentically stated in the Sunnah of Allah, Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that a fornicator is to be banished for a year in addition to lashing him/her. That is because it is related by At-Tirmidhi and other compilers of hadith that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam executed the punishment of lashing and banishing the fornicator, and Abu Bakr executed the punishment of lashing and banishing, and also Omar executed the punishment of lashing and banishing.
It's our next matter. So we got in the case of Ghayr al-Muhsin, that's all mentioned that of what is agreed upon the punishment that a person is to be lashed 100 times. Then the next matter to discuss between the ulama is the matter regarding taghrib, which is that a person be banished for 1 year from their city. So the person, if they're from London, that whatever city that they're from, they'll be told to leave that city. So the person will be lashed. Then the person also will be told that you have to leave the city and go somewhere else. You can't remain in the city for at least a year because you are guilty of this crime. So a part of the punishment is lash plus taghrib, that you have to leave the city. So on this matter, you find that the ulama, they differ on this matter. So you find that the Hanabila take now, so Jumhur of the ulama take the position that what is compulsory in this case, the person is to be lashed and also taghrib, that you have to be told to leave the city. So for Jumhur of the ulama, you're lashed, plus also you have to taghrib, you have to leave the city. Then as for the Ahnaf, that the Hanafis, and I mentioned and I mentioned what they mentioned by Tirmidhi rahimahullah and others regarding, and also the case of the hadith that comes after regarding that matter. Then I mentioned the Ahnaf, Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, the Hanafiya, they pay a position that la yajib at-taghrib, that for a person to leave the city, to abandon the city, is not compulsory. But it is the choice of the imam, is the judge, for him to make that call by way of ta'zir. So if he chooses to add to the punishment, the main punishment is you're whipped. If the judge is not compulsory for you to be told to leave the city, but if the judge chooses to do so, he can do so. Min bab ta'zir. According to the Ahnaf, so it's not wajib, but is that something that the judge could do if he chooses to do so? Min bab al-maslaha. If you see a benefit for it, then you can ask them to leave the city. So that's the aqwal of the ulama on that matter.
Moreover, the Prophet ﷺ said, when an unmarried male commits fornication with an unmarried female, they should receive 100 lashes and banishment for a year.
And that hadith in there, Muslim, hadith in there, Sahih Muslim hadith, Ubadah ibn Samit. So it shows that qawl is somewhat strong, but some mention, as mentioned Ahnaf, it's still the choice of the imam, that if he chooses to do so, he can do so min bab al-ta'zir, not min bab al-azima, or min bab al-hadd.
If the adulterer is a slave, he is to be lashed 50 lashes, as Allah exalted be He says concerning female slaves. But once they are sheltered in marriage, if they should commit adultery, then for them is half the punishment for free unmarried women. Surah An-Nisa at 25.
So in the next case now we discuss concerning adults, free people, as I said, free discussion. Now we're discussing mamluk, those who are abid, mamluk, what's the punishment for them if they were to fall into such a crime?
There is no difference between male and female in this regard. The prescribed punishment mentioned in the Quran is lashing. Stolen to death was also mentioned in the Quran as a prescribed punishment for adultery, yet its word was abrogated, but its ruling is still in force. The punishment of banishing is not to be executed on slaves, for it harms the interest of their masters. In addition, there is nothing mentioned in the Sunnah stating that a slave should be banished in this case. The Prophet ﷺ said concerning the case of a slave girl who committed fornication while not being in a state of ihsan, i.e. not sheltered in marriage, if she commits fornication, then lash her. If she commits it again, then lash her again. And if she repeats it for a third time, then lash her a third time. However, he ﷺ did not mention banishment concerning the fornication of slaves. The prescribed punishment is not to be executed unless the case is void of suspicion of zinnah, adultery or fornication. For the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, avert punishments in the case of suspicion as much as you can. Thus, there is no
that hadith كان
prescribed...
someone متكلم فيه. That hadith is somewhat, so yeah, that hadith is mentioned that khilaf between the ulama is the hadith marfu or mawquf. Now those who mention hadith is more so what is asah or more correct is something that go back to the Sahaba, not to the Prophet alayhi salam.
Thus, there is no prescribed punishment applicable to the one who has sexual intercourse in the following cases. 1. If one has sexual intercourse with a woman mistakenly believing that she is his wife. Number 2. If one thinks one's marriage contract is valid while it is not. Number 3. If the validity of one's marriage is controversial. Number 4. If one is unaware of the prohibition of zinnah because of being a new convert to Islam or being brought up somewhere away from Islamic states. Number 5. If one is forced to commit zinnah.
Yes, so those cases, in these cases then, had the zina is not applied. In these cases, that had a zina is not applied. So you mentioned regarding concerning that case regarding that a person that marry a sister, marry a woman, then found out later on that the woman that he married, that but they're stranger, not related. But that woman that he married eventually, that comes to that she was breastfed by the same woman that he suckled from. Then in that case, that becomes a matter of shubha. So there's no punishment that is put upon them. Just then you have a next case, for example, that a woman marrying, get the fatwa from the sheikh or from that a woman marrying without a wali. You understand? She's a grown woman, she's in her 50s, never been married before, but because she's 50, that's that she's in her 30s, that they marry her without a wali. So in that case, she still are required to have a wali, or if she's been married and divorced, and then the divorce is carried out without a wali permission or consent, then that's a shubha. That becomes on the shubha where the zina is not per se applied to that case, but the marriage is to be looked at and to be redone. So he gives some cases of concern in those matters, that a person that grew up in a place that the person didn't know or are aware that this act is haram, because they have no access to Muslim and Muslim information, so they didn't have no knowledge of this. So these cases, they mentioned that these are cases of shubha, where the judge have to consider these cases, that with these cases, then the punishment will not be applied. Aywa.
Ibn al-Mundhir said, all the people of religious knowledge, scholars from whom we have derived knowledge unanimously agree that the execution of prescribed punishment should be averted in the case of suspicion. In fact, this is an aspect of the easiness and leniency of the Sharia, as suspicion indicates that the sinner has committed the sin unintentionally. Allah exalted be, He says, and there is no blame upon you for that in which you have erred, but only for what your hearts intended, and Allah is forgiving and merciful. Surah Al-Ahzab, Ayat 5.
So you might have a case regarding that, if these things are done unintentionally, the person didn't, but you might have a case where it said that a person got married knowing, know the what, and you have cases where get married, these cases where also the qadi could punish them by way of ta'zir. The qadi could apply the punishment based upon ta'zir, where you see that in this case, some shubha may be claimed to be involved, but you believe that it's best that there's some punishment still be given to the party involved because of certain things. She got married without her wali, and this is the third time she have done it. You with me? So she's gotten married, and this is the third time, and all times without a wali. Then that's a problem. Huh? Sometimes the third time that occurs to the first time, and she was warned. and second time, but you see, then you see a pattern. You understand? Then the judge now need to take another approach to the matter. The matter needs to be looked at from a different angle in those cases. Aywa.
Among the conditions that obligate executing the prescribed punishment on the offender of zina is that there must be certainty that he has committed it. Such certainty cannot be reached except through two ways. The first way is that this offender confesses 4 times that he has committed zina. This is due to the fact that Ma'iz ibn Malik, may Allah be pleased with him, confessed to the Prophet ﷺ 4 times that he had committed it, after which the Prophet ﷺ applied the legal punishment to him. He ﷺ kept refraining from punishing him 3 times until Ma'iz confessed for the 4th time. If confessing less than 4 times had been enough to execute the punishment, the Prophet ﷺ would have executed it on him at any of the 3 times of confession.
So at the time of case of confession, the person needs to repeat it at least 4 times. So that in these cases, so in the person with a confession, is one confession enough, or a person has to somewhat make that confession repeatedly. So of those things that are looked at regarding confession being done repeatedly. Aywa.
The confession is not deemed valid unless the offender declares that she has committed zina in plain words. If she does not mention that the sin of zina in the confession, then no punishment is applicable, as the offender might mean any prohibited act of lust that does not entail a prescribed punishment, unlike zina. This is the way the Prophet ﷺ said to Ma'iz, may Allah be pleased with him, when the latter confessed to the Prophet ﷺ, maybe you have only kissed her, winked at her, or looked at her lustfully. When Ma'iz insisted he did it, the Prophet ﷺ kept inquiring until there was no other possibilities. Moreover, if the offender recants her confession before the execution of the punishment, she must not be punished. This is illustrated in the way the Prophet ﷺ continued asking Ma'iz and others in other cases. In the case latter takes his confession back. Also, when Ma'iz tried to escape while being punished, and then the people caught him and stoned him to death, the Prophet ﷺ said, why did you not leave him? For he might repent and Allah would accept his repentance. The second way to reach certainty concerning a case of zina, adultery or fornication is the presence of 4 witnesses. Allah exalted be He says, why did they who slandered not produce for it 4 witnesses? Surah An-Nur, Ayat 13. Allah also says, and those who accuse chaste women and then do not produce 4 witnesses. Surah An-Nur, Ayat 4. Moreover, Allah exalted be He says, bring against them 4 witnesses from among you. Surah An-Nisa, Ayat 15.
So the Shaykh is discussing regarding concerning this case of zina, regarding a proof of zina that can be taken, one, that a person make al-iqrar, where a person can somewhat confession. So the person making confession that they have come forward and mentioned that they have committed zina. So in that case, that is iqrar from the person themselves making their own confession, so that's accepted. Then we said no, with other, but that's one of the method of proof of zina. And the second that is used as a proof that I mentioned here, a shuhud, that so having witnesses, and they will discuss concerning this matter of the witnesses, what are those criteria that needs to be in place. Aywa.
The conditions for the validity of testimony in the case of zina. Number 1, the 4 witnesses must testify against the adulterer or the fornicator at the same place of assembly.
So that's 1.
Number 2, they must testify for the same legal case of zina, i.e., their testimony must concern the same specific case of zina committed by that person.
Okay, so that's 2.
Number 3, they must describe the committed sexual intercourse in a way that puts aside the possibility of committing any sin other than zina. This is because some actions preceding the sexual intercourse do not deserve the legal penalty for zina, such as kissing and foreplay. So the witnesses' testimonies must be made clear to put aside any doubt.
Yes, as American, they can describe that they actually see the man with his private enter into her, not just kissing, not just being close together. Yes, and they have to actually can describe that. They saw the man penetrate the woman. So it's not even, that's also the description, and that's from all. All after can make that description.
Number 4, the 4 witnesses must be just men. Neither the testimony of women or that of wicked, dissolute people is accepted.
And I mentioned concerning adala, udul, that it varies. So you might find at the time of the Sahaba that compared to people who are said to be udul, upright, compared to present day time, that the standard minute, so it goes back to the urf as to what become now the common thing that is there. But there have to be somewhat, udul to a degree.
Number 5, there must be no defects in validating the testimony of any of them, such as blindness or the like.
So those things also, although the condition the Shaykh mentioned, that should be in place. These are the conditions that should be in place. So the conditions are very strict. For people, each can describe what they have seen, and you have to have 4 witnesses and go through all that detail. So everyone saw the same act by the same people with the same discussion, similar discussion. You understand? Explain what each saw is difficult. It's difficult.
If one of these conditions is not fulfilled, then the prescribed punishment of slander must be executed upon the witnesses. For in this case, they are considered slanderers. Allah exalted be, He says, and those who accuse chaste women and do not produce 4 witnesses, lash them 80 times. Surah An-Nur, Ayat 4.
So you have a case that we had that husband and wife together in the majlis discussing the issues, and for example, the husband wants to say to his wife that she accused me of Zinnah. You understand? That's a serious accusation. You understand? So okay, what you mean by your wife accuse you of Zinnah? You understand? So she said, no, I didn't accuse you of Zinnah, but he said, yes, you understand? So it's like, what do you meant, or what was meant? You understand? She meant that you were looking at a woman inappropriately, but that's not Zinnah though. You understand? That's not Zinnah. So you're saying that she accused you of Zinnah because you said you're looking at a woman in an inappropriate way. You understand? But that's not Zinnah. So he said, no, yes. I said, so she said that I said that you were looking at a woman inappropriately, but I didn't say it was Zinnah, but he's describing that as Zinnah. Which is, you understand, it comes with some serious ahkam. That so in that case, if it's Zinnah that you're saying about that, then okay, then go into lan, isn't it? So at times you have to be precise regarding what's being said, because it can have some serious ramifications, or consequences.
Scholars unanimously agree that Zinnah can be proven by any of the aforementioned 2 ways, namely confession and testimony. Yet they disagree on whether there is a 3rd way that can prove it, namely pregnancy, as in the case when a woman conceives by having neither a husband nor a master if she is a slave girl. Some of the scholars maintain that this case does not entail a prescribed punishment on the woman, for she may be pregnant due to a doubtful marriage or compulsion. Other scholars believe that this case deserves executing the prescribed punishment as long as the woman does not claim any matter of suspicion concerning her pregnancy. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said, this ruling that a pregnant woman who has neither a husband nor a master is to be legally punished is the one known to have carried out at the times of the rightly guided caliphs, and it is more consistent with the legal principles. Moreover, it is the opinion maintained by the scholars of Medina. It is based on the fact that uncertain possibilities are discarded. Furthermore, Ibn al-Qayyim said, Omar ibn Khattab judged that the woman who becomes pregnant by having neither a husband nor a master is to be stoned to death. This is the opinion adopted by the Maliki school, and it is the more valid of the 2 opinions attributed to Imam Ahmed, being based on irrefutable evidence, namely the woman's pregnancy.
Sometimes you have those cases that the woman, she's found to be pregnant and she's not known to be married, but she's pregnant, so she got pregnant. So something has happened. So the thing is that if it improves there's no husband, then so this is the area where they mentioned the ulama that differ concerning. In that case, can you apply the hudud on such a case? The woman is pregnant, but she's not known to be married, or no husband present. So how she got married? And he said no, it's not known that she was like raped or of that nature, or of those cases. How she got pregnant, but she doesn't want to disclose.
Yeah.
You understand? So, I said the ulama discussed, Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Adam mentioned that in that case, that she could be stoned. Now, we said the stone occur after she have given birth and all those things have occurred. Now,
Should be stoned or just beaten?
huh?
Should be stoned or whipped?
What he says here.
And it just says had.
He had. So in this case of
Stoned.
stoned that I mentioned regarding stoned, but she's not. You understand? So, but Allahu Alam with a stone or whipped, the thing that goes back to the ijtihad of the judge. So we'll be concerned that it's down that as in this case since mentioned had. So the had could be it is stoning or it could be rajam depending on our previous or situation. She's at this moment married, but maybe she was married before. You understand? So that will take a different course. Or a case that she's known to be said to be a bikr and never been married, but then now she pops up and she's, you understand, pregnant. You apply the ad according to what which is appropriate to that case. But is it a must? So you have cases that they have discussed, even Taymiyyah have discussed regarding that woman who have said to be pregnant by way of the jinn. You understand? Is that something which is possible? A woman being impregnated by a jinn. So you have those things that have been discussed, but overall go back to the hakim to see or the judge to see what's appropriate as what he think is the best in that case. So it could be so for the judge to make that call, or the state to have a general rule regarding those cases as to what is the ruling on cases of that nature. Aywa.
Just as prescribed punishment is to be executed in case of zinnah, adultery, or fornication, when its conditions are fulfilled, it is to be executed in the case of sodomy, namely having anal sex, which is an evil crime and an ugly perversion, contradictory to natural disposition. Allah exalted be He said regarding the people of Lut who used to practice sodomy, do you commit such immorality as no one has preceded you from amongst the worlds, i.e. peoples? Indeed, you approach men with desire instead of women. Rather, you are a transgressing people. Surah Al-Araf, 80-81.
Yes, there's a third type of another type of intimacy, which is people are committing this type of act. That they have different names that they call them, refer to them today, but people who fall into this type of act of sodomy, in various ways. So those people fall into that. With a person that, so you have those cases, they would say the cases we are going to consider that's done with consent. So we're talking about cases where a person have intimacy with another person by way of sodomy through the back.
In fact, sodomy is prohibited according to the noble Quran, the Sunnah, and the consensus of scholars. Allah exalted be He described the people of Prophet Lut as committing an unprecedented immoral act, so such people are deviants in this world. Allah also described them as being trespassers, transgressors, and criminals. Thus, because of the ugliness of their sin, Allah punished the people of Lut with a punishment that He had never inflicted on other people, which He turned their town upside down and rained on them stones of hard clay. In addition to this, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ cursed both the one who practices sodomy and his partner.
So these are considered male with male. Aywa.
Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah, may Allah have mercy on him, said, the most valid opinion maintained by the Prophet's companions is that both those who practice sodomy are to be killed, whether they are muhsan or not. He added, the companions of the Prophet have not differed on killing sodomites, and some of them are of the opinion that a sodomite is to be raised to the top of the highest building in town and thrown from there, followed by stones thrown at him.
So that case would be an even more severe penalty for the people who fall into that category. Now, it would be a more severe, so they'll be take them to a high rise, a high elevated area, and throw them off. And if they survive, stone them to death on top of it.
SubhanAllah.
Aywa.
Al-Muwaffaq said, as the judgment of killing the sodomite is unanimously agreed upon among the Prophet's companions, they all have acted in accordance with that ruling, yet they have differed regarding the way a sodomite is to be killed. Moreover, Ibn Rajab said, the sound opinion is that a sodomite is to be killed whether he is muhsan or not, for Allah exalted be He says about the sodomites of the people of Lut, and rained upon them stones of layered hard clay. Surah Hud, ayat 82. In this connection, Imam Ahmed said, the prescribed punishment for a sodomite is stolen to death, whether he has previously married or not. This is the same opinion maintained by Imam Malik and others, and it is also one of the two opinions attributed to Imam al-Shafi'i. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said, if you find anyone committing the deed of the people of Lut, i.e. sodomy, kill the one who does it and the one to whom it is done. Related by Abu Dawood. According to another narration, the Prophet ﷺ said, kill the upper and the lower, i.e. the two partners. Among the acts of sodomy is having anal sexual intercourse with one's wife. Allah exalted be He says, then come to them, i.e. wives, from where Allah has ordained for you. Indeed, Allah loves those who are constantly repentant and loves those who purify themselves. Surah Baqarah, ayat 222. Ibn Mas'ud, Mujahid and others maintained that the lawful sexual intercourse...
Ibn Mas'ud or Ibn Abbas?
Sorry. Ibn Abbas, Mujahid and others maintained that the lawful sexual intercourse meant in the verse is that made through one's wife's vagina, from where Allah has ordained for you. In addition, Ali ibn Abu Talha reported that Ibn Abbas said, the verse that reads, then come to them from where Allah has ordained for you, Surah Baqarah, ayat 222, means that you must have sexual intercourse only through the vagina and never exceed it. Having it elsewhere, whoever does anything of that kind is regarded as a transgressor. Moreover, whoever has anal sexual intercourse with his wife must receive a deterrent punishment. If such a person continues committing it, then it is obligatory for his wife to ask for separation from him, for he is a low, villainous person with whom she must by no means live under such circumstances.
And that's the end of?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're ending, inshallah. So that's the end of this discussion, or this bab of bab Hudud-Zinnah. And he mentioned that Zinnah fall into different categories. As we started by mentioning that the ulama, they differ, a difference regarding what is said to be Zinnah, or how they define as Zinnah. Is Zinnah inclusive of both intimate, the person entering the front, that's agreed upon, and is it the back also the same? Majority mentioned that both front and back is considered to be Zinnah. We find that others of the Ahnaf that mention that Zinnah only relates to the person entering through the front. As for the back, it's something else. Then they discuss regarding the matter that what are the conditions regarding that for stoning for the person said to be muhsin and also ghayr muhsin, what are the conditions they have to fulfill. So for muhsin, there's certain conditions that they have to be, which are the primary of those conditions that a person is supposed to have experienced marriage, him or her. And with the other condition that they discuss concerning ghayr muhsin is the person who have not experienced marriage, they say bikr. Then cases that they discuss that what would be concerning, then you have the case of the person who's the type of punishment for each crime. So those who, for the muhsin, the punishment for their crime is what? Rajam, that they're stoned to death. Now, in public. So it's a public act that is done. Then the next thing that they discuss is regarding ghayr muhsin, that their punishment is that they're flogged. Then second, and the ulama differ regarding should they be banished from the city. So banishment from the city. Is this something which also goes along with their punishment? Of majority mention yes, they should be banished, and that is wajib. And others of the Ahnaf that mention no, but it is left for the Imam, the Qadi, to make that decision whether to do so. If he chooses based upon the benefit, then I may discuss concerning that of those things regarding Zinnah, Thabut, regarding concerning how to confirm of Zinnah. Then discuss concerning that of cases Iqrar, the person have somewhat have said they have done so. So, and then you have cases where you have witnesses that are there that have witnessed the act. Then you have those conditions that are in place. Then they discuss concerning after this, the act regarding concerning that intercourse by the dubur, now of people, which are between male and male. Regarding male, and you have also, that's considered a different case regarding female with female, but you have male with male is one which is more discussed. And they mention that the punishment for this, if it's confirmed, that whether the person is Muslim or not, in both cases they're killed. In both cases, they're killed. The way for them to be killed, khilaf between the ulama as to what is the way to kill them. Then I mentioned that between a husband and wife, that if the man was to approach his wife through the anus, then that is haram. But if it is something that is being put upon her by him, then she can file for a termination of the marriage. She can file for termination of the marriage if he continuously put this upon her or wants to do this act with her. So that inshallah some of those matters that relates to ahkam az-zina. So that inshallah will end and continue next week with the next what is discussed next is.
So the question, someone was asking a question. So is that the answering that question is what you mentioned about they can legally file for divorce if the husband enters the wife from the back.
Hey, if he comes and says, so
The actual punishment, is there a punishment? That's what they're asking.
hey, there's no punishment. It is no had. It means so there's no had like once that's prescribed punishment. There's no had.
I believe that's what they mean.
Hey.
Or can the Imam punish that person?
Okay, if it goes to the court, then the court also he can do ta'zir. It's a form of ta'zir that mentioned of this, that because of what have happened, that a judge may decide that the husband to be punished in some way, and she can still file for divorce or get her divorce, but he'll be punished because of something that he was doing repeatedly to her, type of thing. So he said, okay, you're deserving a form of punishment, but it's not per se what they call referred to as ta'zir. It's a form of ta'zir, which is not a had punishment, but it's a form of punishment left to the qadi to apply. So that inshallah ta'ala will end. Wabillahi ta'ala tawfiq.
The new things that is happening now is lesbianism.
Hey, so that's between woman and woman.
Now,
Hey,
is it
hey, haram.
according to the hadith, is it
Hey, it's haram.
now? Is it the same ruling or something?
That with those things regarding consider that they may say,
It's a good question.
yeah, yes, I'm saying that you find most of the nusus mentioned regarding qawm luti, which is more concerning male with male. But now you find that the new is, you understand, a practice now between women have become more common. You understand? So that also, there's now, to my knowledge, there's no had. So go back to the ijtihad of the hakim regarding how to combat those. Even said, if you're going to make ijtihad, it will be with lawat. But because it's penetration of some form of intimacy, you understand? But I'm saying with women, it's a bit, not as, it's a bit wild. I don't, yeah, it's a bit.
It's a long conversation.
It's a long conversation. That's the best way to put it. With women, it's a long conversation. It's a longer, you understand? It's a little longer conversation. Fallah mustaan. Allah mustaan. But there's not per se had, but there's ta'zir.
But are there ulama that take the same rule, that speak of this, and will take the same ruling as two men?
Now, with a man, because it's a penetration. You understand? With his organ entering the person's dubur. You understand? Because with female, there's nothing for them to enter the front nor the back. In reality. You understand? So it's a bit lesser degree to that of the male, but it is haram without doubt. But as for the punishment, is not, would be al-had. There's no specific things mentioned regarding their case. But something we'll look at. Next week we'll bring to us what is mentioned regarding that in more details, inshallah ta'ala.
And you see, if there's a woman, she was a mushrik, and she becomes Muslim, is she considered as a bikr, Islamically?
Okay, so as long as the woman have had intimacy before she and has had intimacy, then she lose being called a bikr.
Even if she was kafir?
Hey, regardless of, you understand, she lose from she have an intimacy, you understand, then she's not considered to be a bikr type of thing. So even though she might accept Islam before she, you understand, accept Islam, then she lost her virginity, and that remains. That remains. And that's the same thing. It would be a man, also a man. You understand? So the man, before he had children, but out of what, in Jahiliyyah, that accept Islam, is not considered to be a bikr. A free, baligh.
So bad. So if it happened to her,
Below.
you know what I'm going to say? I don't really want to say on camera, but
Young, they say below puberty. Mr. Between, so you have, if it occurs between people who are below puberty, there's no, you see, I mean, adults with them, hey, then, as I said, that of the ulama concerned those cases, yes, still, it would not consider to be per se a case of muhsin.
for the young person.
Hey, for the young person, even for the older person, because there's a concept with this, yes, and so is the but there's a punishment, but it wouldn't be for the young person that as the same as the older the person was baligh. You understand? They wouldn't be the same because of the condition. You have to be above a certain age to get a certain type of punishment. They're below that age group, so it'd be a bit different.
But then would they that person, even though that thing happened to them, whether it's consensual or non-consensual, but it happened to them at a young age, they would still lose the title of being vicar.
Hey, they still lose that. You understand? They still lose that title because that act have been done to them. Okay, so inshallah ta'ala, next week we'll continue. Billahi ta'ala, tawfiq.